Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. In Pennsylvania, every state park has its purpose. Allegheny Island shows people what undeveloped islands once looked like on the river. Colton Point features stunning views of the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. And Pine Grove Furnace highlights the iron-making industry crucial to Pennsylvania and America's growth. But are there any places set aside for learning and study? As it turns out, there is. One such place is Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center. Located in Berks County, Nolde Forest was established as the first environmental education center operated by DCNR's Bureau of State Parks in the 1970s. It's dedicated to helping visitors and community members develop sound environmental ethics based upon science. The park has provided a wide variety of nature-based educational programs for students, teachers, organizations, and families. Students take part in guided, hands-on activities that let them explore unique ecosystems and deepen their awareness, appreciation, and understanding of the natural environment. Nolde Forest also functions as an outdoor laboratory for biologists, college students, and natural resource professionals conducting a wide range of environmental studies and research projects. But I know what you're thinking. Christian, Bobby, I'm not a child or a scientist. Is there anything for me there? Don't worry. I got you, player. As much as Nolde Forest is about serious study and learning, it's also about recreation. The park has hiking trails, historic structures, ponds, streams, and more to explore. But before we learn more about the park, here's the stats. Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center is a 725-acre park located in Berks County. Available activities include hiking, picnicking, wildlife watching, fishing, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and sightseeing. A notable feature of the park is its peaceful, learning environment. Nolde Forest was named after Jacob Nolde, who acquired the property in the early 1900s. Nearby towns include Reading, Monton, and Wyomissing. State lands that are close by include State Game Lands 274, 324, and 280, French Creek State Park, and William Penn State Forest. You may enjoy the park if you enjoy learning and outdoor recreation. I'm excited to welcome Brent Erb to the podcast. Brent is the Center Manager at Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center. Brent, thanks so much for joining the program.
It's good to be here. Thank you for asking me to be here with you, Christian.
How would you describe the park to someone who's never been there before?
Nolde Forest is a gem. This land, it's a pine and mixed hardwood forest situated within a lovely stream valley. The place has a deep history, dating back to the Lenape, who would hunt and fish this land, to the colliers who settled in the area, and farmers to create charcoal for the iron industry. It's home to many species of wildlife, including foxes and owls, dragonflies, songbirds, amphibians. The list goes on. And we have many miles of trails for folks to explore through a walk along the stream in this lovely forest.
Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center was established in 1966 to be the Commonwealth's first environmental education center. Can you tell us about the C.H. McConnell Environmental Education Center?
You're absolutely correct. We have the distinction of being not only one of Pennsylvania's state parks, but the distinction of being the first environmental education center established in 1966. And at that time, the vision was to help our community create a connection and better learn about the environment and their place, our place within the environment. The McConnell Hall, named for Cliff McConnell, was built in 1974. That's our classroom. He was a retired deputy secretary of our predecessor organization, the Department of Environmental Resources. And he, like many others, knew more than 50 years ago that environmental education should be the core of all learning. And our community needs that environmental awareness that can help translate into an environmental ethic. So arguably, this is more important today than it has ever been. And we continue to advance this work of environmental education here on now nearly 725 acres of land just outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, here in Berks County.
Nolde Forest has about 10 miles of trails. Do you have any trail recommendations?
I do. I think that walking from the historic sawmill to the springs of Punch's Run really reveals some of the greatest gems. The sound of the flowing stream, the wildlife, the smell of pine, the beauty of a historic stone bridge. There's educational stops. Currently, there's also a storybook walk. That's about a 2 mile round trip walk, going up to the springs and back, about 1 mile up and 1 mile back. For those who wish to walk further and explore a little bit more of what the Environmental Education Center has to offer, I'd certainly encourage looking at the recommended hikes that are posted on the Friends of Nolde Forest website, or those printed on our map and rec guide.
The watershed trail brings visitors along Punch's Run. What can visitors see if they take the trail?
Well, as I mentioned, a leisurely walk along Punch's Run um, allows visitors to walk both either the watershed trail or the boulevard trail. I describe the boulevard as is the highway. It's the single lane gravel road that was intended originally as a fire road, as access to the foresters who were planting this forest along the stream. That trail allows folks to walk side by side. If you're out with your family for the day, two or three abreast can walk along side by side. The watershed trail is that single track narrow path along the stream and has a little more roots and rocks along the creek. So folks can see, as I mentioned, the historic stone bridge, wildlife, listening to the birds, smelling the pine forest, hearing the stream flow over rocks and logs.
What is the Chickadee Nature Discovery Area?
As the name implies, it's a nature discovery area intended to provide a space for children to explore the natural world. And it's a place where children can use their imaginations and play make-believe, often with sticks and rocks and the various activities that we include there.
It must be great to be able to see kids engaging in nature and maybe discovering what it's like for the first time to be out in the woods.
It is the best thing to see that spark in a child's eye of curiosity and of discovery is one of the reasons that most of us, many of us who work in this profession, really believe in the meaning and the purpose of our work.
The park has several bodies of water, including Angelica Creek, North Pond, Painted Turtle Pond, and Punch's Run. Which of these support fishing for visitors?
So you're correct. There's numerous bodies of water here. Punch's Run being uh, the lifeline, if you will, the main artery through Nolde Forest. Because Nolde Forest is an environmental education center and managed a little different than some other of our Pennsylvania state parks and forests, our fishing here is restricted to a couple places during a few times of year. So of those four bodies of water that you mentioned, the North Pond allows for adult and children's fishing only, catch and release, adults and children, intended to be a place of teaching about fishing or passive recreation for our older community members. And then during the trout fishing season, we do allow for trout fishing within a short segment of the Angelica Creek, just to the north of the sawmill, of the historic sawmill parking area. There is an area of stream that is open to fishing.
Despite the area being deforested during the big logging boom, the park has incredible biodiversity. What sort of work has been done by Jacob Nolde to bring this forest back to life?
Jacob Nolde set in motion an amazing legacy of conservation work here that has led to the return of many wildlife and healthier streams and other water bodies. When he first purchased this land in the early 1900s, the landscape was quite impacted by previous generations of industry, including the iron industry, which was looking to cut trees uh, for charcoal, turning them into charcoal. After several decades of that work, a sawmill that we've mentioned was built here along Angelica Creek to cut up timber for houses and barns and the hotels in the Reading area. When Jacob Nolde purchased this land, most everything had been cut over. The story is that a single white pine stood along the banks of the stream near the sawmill. I can imagine that this tree was left primarily as a space for shade for those working at the sawmill. But it inspired Jacob to recognize that if a single pine tree could grow here in this soil, in this stream valley, that many more could. And so he set to planting trees immediately after purchasing the land in 1904. With that has come increased study of our wildlife population as well as forestry practices through the years. In fact, I was just recently looking at photographs from the Pennsylvania State Archives that include images of Jacob Nolde, Dr. Joseph Rothrock, the Honorable S.B. Elliott, who were here with Jacob Nolde and the first forester, William Kohout, in 1916, looking at Jacob Nolde's forest and studying the impacts of planting forests here in Pennsylvania. And to this day, the research continues through research of many different plant and animal species.
As somebody who's been a student of this sort of work, it must be great to see so many kind of titans that were involved in the area that you currently serve.
Absolutely. This this space has been important to many people for a very long time and continues to be so today. And I feel quite certain that it will continue to be so in the future.
Well, thanks to this amazing conservation work, wildlife returned to the park. Can you tell us about what kind of animals visitors might see if they go on a visit?
Absolutely. Wildlife that we regularly see here in Nolde Forest include many different species of songbirds, including chickadees and wood thrushes and phoebes and nuthatches. We also see owls and hear owls, from screech owls to barred owls to great horned owls. Occasionally, we'll see fox, we see deer. There are many different species of amphibians, snakes and turtles, and salamanders that live here. We mentioned the water bodies. There's fish.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, though we oftentimes are asked if we see bears or mountain lions, and we do not see bears or mountain lions here.
Nolde Forest serves as an outdoor laboratory for visiting biologists, college students, and natural resource professionals. What kind of topics are people researching in the forest?
So the research that's conducted here is really multifaceted and really quite exciting. We know that this research is more important today than it ever has. With climate change, environmental and educational injustices, and an ever more beautiful and diverse society that needs an education in, for, and about the environment, investments like our parks and forests are critical to helping our community connect with nature. Here we help them develop those critical thinking and problem solving skills and understanding that we're a part of nature and that nature teaches us that diversity makes us more resilient. And with that, the research that is conducted here it spans so many different disciplines, from math to science to technology to engineering to the arts, reading and writing and artwork. So some of the research that is actively taking place here these days include those who participate in university studies, oftentimes university and secondary school studies on birds, small mammals, amphibians, and forest health, to name a few of the big ones.
That's really exciting. That's awesome. And now, let's hear from our sponsors. Join the Keystone Trails Association's Trail Care team to show some love to the trails you love. KTA organizes hands-on stewardship events and training workshops to maintain and expand hiking trails in Pennsylvania. You can find a trail care event near you. Check out KTA's schedule of events online at kta-hike.org. Are you looking for your next adventure? Unlock some of the best landscapes in Pennsylvania with incredibly detailed, highly curated, waterproof trail maps from the folks at Purple Lizard. They create extraordinary maps of Pennsylvania state forests for people who love to explore the outdoors. Find them at your local outfitters, bike shops, and bookstores, or visit purplelizard.com, where your next adventure begins. Ready for more time outdoors? Check out Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation, a new podcast from the foundation. You'll hear stories, tips, and ideas to make the most of Pennsylvania's parks and forests. Whether it's a quick hike or a weekend adventure, Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation will inspire your next outing. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Looking for a way to add some local Pennsylvania flair to your space? Check out Sisters Sunflowers. They create unique stickers inspired by small local spaces that make your community shine. From quirky caves to hidden local gems, their stickers bring your favorite places to life. Perfect for your laptop, water bottle, or anywhere that needs a little hometown love. For both locals and visitors, there's stickers, magnets, prints, and more celebrating Pennsylvania's most iconic parks and forests. And for more avid explorers, there's even a hand-drawn poster to keep track of the Pennsylvania state parks and forests that you've been to. Use code HELLBENDER15 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Support local, inspire adventure, and decorate with meaning. Only at Sisters Sunflowers. Shop now and celebrate the places that make your town special. All right, back to the show. Visitors might be surprised to see a mansion on the property. What's the history behind the mansion?
The Nolde mansion was built by Hans Nolde, who was the son of Jacob Nolde, the visionary of the forest. The mansion is quite remarkable, built of stone and old historic timbers that were repurposed from other structures that had stood here on this land as Jacob Nolde was purchasing parcels to make up what became Punch's Run and today becomes what we call Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center. The mansion sits on top of the hill, has a Tudor design, an English Tudor design mixed with sort of medieval castle. It's about 10,000 square feet, and the mansion serves today as the park office. And the office houses our staff, and with that came in the 70s, after this land and facility were purchased, some reworkings of the buildings, including the mansion. Turning bedrooms into offices isn't as simple as taking out a bed and putting in a desk. There were some other adjustments that were made, but the exterior of the mansion, as well as the entryway, we call the hallway, and the living room, and the dining room, the old study, still retains some of those remarkable characteristics. And one can see that conservation ethic in the family through their repurposing of old materials. Many folks come and see the mansion and they think it looks a lot older. It looks a lot older than it is. It was completed, the family moved in 1927. However, many of the timbers that make it up were harvested old oak and chestnut from other standing buildings on the property from the 18th and 19th century.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. You've mentioned it a couple times so far, the sawmill. What's the history behind the sawmill located in the park along Angelica's Creek?
So the sawmill was built by the Yoakum family, which had a long-standing history in this area and still does. Approximately 1830, the sawmill was built along Angelica Creek, right at the confluence with Punch's Run. And it was constructed to cut timber. This was mostly second and third growth timber at that time in the 1830s, because as I had mentioned, much of it had been cut for charcoal previously. So this is that second and third growth trees being cut for lumber for houses, barns, hotels, and so forth here in the area. When Jacob Nolde purchased the land in the early 1900s, he was not so intent on cutting down trees. His goal was to plant trees. His intention was to plant trees. However, he recognized that in order to plant some of these pine plantations that he was focused on required him to clear some land of some scrub and older trees. And so the sawmill continued to be used for the first decade or so after Jacob Nolde had acquired the property, including the sawmill, to cut timber and boards. But then was shortly thereafter decommissioned. The pond that diverted water to power the sawmill was drained and returned to a stream. And two of the other ancillary buildings in the parking lot, or I'm sorry, in the sawmill, historic sawmill complex were taken down, one being a drying shed, the other being an ice house. Ice was harvested from the pond, and then the sawdust from the sawmill was used to insulate it and keep it cool through the summer. Those two buildings were taken down. We know sometime shortly thereafter, 1910, because a painting done by Christopher Shearer, a local landscape artist, from 1910 shows all three buildings there in what is today the sawmill parking area. So when visitors come and they park in the sawmill parking area, they're in fact parking in the footprint of this sort of historic landscape, and the sawmill is still there.
So Jacob Nolde was really doing a lot to bring the land back to what it might have originally been. When you talk about the work that was done, that sounds like work that would be done today by DCNR people, but the fact that it was done so far back then, looking forward to like conservation, is really amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. I think that one of the things that sets Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center apart from many other forests that folks may visit throughout Pennsylvania is that if we recall that this forest began being planted in 1904, many of the forests that were planted in Pennsylvania following the Industrial Revolution, and we often talk of these working landscapes that cut timber or mined the surface. Many of those were planted in the late 1930s or the latter half of the 1930s by the Tree Army, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. And I remind folks that if you've planted a tree in your yard or your family planted a tree in your property 30 years ago and you planted one last year, the difference in carbon sequestration and the makeup of the mass of a single tree over 30 years is remarkable. The makeup of a forest that is 30 years older on a forest landscape scale is quite special, and I think lends itself to be such a great support of wildlife in this area and ties to the other landscapes in the area.
That's a great point because they had a 30-year head start pretty much.
They did.
Yeah. The Friends of Nolde Forest exist to support the park. What kind of things do they do?
They are so important and do so much for us, from maintaining their own website that provides information like the recommended hikes that I mentioned. We have volunteers who are here regularly, walking our trails, monitoring wildlife and plantings. One of our volunteers comes each week and photographs and posts those things to Facebook and has created a bit of a scavenger hunt for the community in the area to come and see what it was that they saw while they were here. The Friends of Nolde Forest help staff our mansion open house events that we have throughout the year. They help us with our programming. They help us with raising funds for special events and for historic preservation. They do so much to support the workings of our environmental education programming and the caring for the natural, cultural, and historic landscape that we have here.
What do you love most about the park?
It's definitely our staff, volunteers, partners, and visitors. They help make this place special, truly.
Is there something everyone should experience when they visit?
Yes. Walking along Punch's Run is extremely special, and I encourage every visitor to take the time to do so. a brief 1 mile walk up and 1 mile walk back from the sawmill to the springs is so valuable. And it really allows us to reconnect with ourselves because it is so quiet. It is the sounds of the stream, the breeze through the trees, the birds singing. It's just a very special place that I highly encourage every visitor here to experience.
If a visitor has a weekend to explore the park, what do you recommend? Do you think Nolde Forest is a place that a day or two is more than enough to be able to see a lot, or do you expect more time?
Of course not, Christian. I think that there are things to see here every day of the year. Um, and with that, if a visitor has a weekend to explore, what I would recommend is taking a look at our calendar of events, see what's going on. Think about when oftentimes a morning arrival, getting in shortly after the gate opens at 8 a.m. Offers some of the most quiet and peaceful time in the forest. um, Begin to explore the trails. One could theoretically walk all of the trails in one day if they chose to, 10 miles. Some people do. Um, but explore it at a slower pace and more often. And I think one is more likely to gain a lot of value from the experience. And I would really consider a visitor who's in the area for the weekend to look at one of the many other programs going on with any number of our partnering agencies and organizations in the area. So if you're in this area for the weekend, my goodness, going to the Reading Public Museum, going to the Goggle Works Center for Arts, coming here, maybe going and seeing a planetarium show at the Reading Planetarium in the evening, and returning the following evening for a walk before sunset is certainly can fill one's weekend schedule.
Now, if a visitor only has a couple hours, what should they see?
I think that a parking at this historic sawmill is a great place to start. Walking up along Watershed or Boulevard to the Springs, crossing over the historic stone bridge and several other footbridges along the way. And then on the return, loop in a walk past the historic mansion and take a walk around it and see the interpretive signs and exhibits. Um, they're welcome to go into the McConnell Classroom building, where we have restrooms and a water fountain and some other information. Um, and and from there, a leisurely downhill walk to the stream and return to the sawmill is a great way to spend 2 hours.
Do you have a favorite time in the park?
Every day of the year between 8 a.m. and sunset is a great time to be here. Personally, I enjoy morning walks. The peace and quiet, the bird activity, the glimpses of wildlife that are still working back to their dens or to their resting places for the day, is quite special. So every day of the year, I love the mornings.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. And I also tend to find that most people don't like waking up early. So you get away from people, be able to see something before everybody else. I wouldn't say before everybody else ruins it, but certainly before everybody else makes a lot of noise.
It absolutely, the mornings are often filled with the sounds of wildlife and less of the sounds of human activity.
Do you have any tips for people who plan on visiting the park or any suggestions to make their visit as enjoyable as possible?
Be curious, do a little more research, check out our website to learn about our rules and regulations and see what alerts may be posted. For example, in the winter, we regularly update the winter conditions so visitors can better understand what they're getting into. Many of our state parks and forests and public lands throughout Pennsylvania have microclimates, weather that doesn't necessarily mirror the weather conditions in the nearest town. It may be plowed and snow-free in town, and yet our trails are still covered in snow because the tree canopy keeps it shaded. When visitors continue to come through the winter with snow, it can become icy fairly quickly. And so we post those updates so visitors know what they can expect and perhaps what tools to bring along. I think going prepared and planning ahead is essential. Check the weather conditions, check the time of the sunset, pack water, a bottle of water, a snack, maybe a raincoat, perhaps some cross-country skis in the winter. And simply be considerate of others. Recognize that many folks come here to enjoy nature and our programming. And so keeping that in the forefront of our minds, I think, is always important for being good visitors and good members of our community.
Brent, thanks so much for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Christian. I really am grateful to be among the ranks of folks like Steph Strasnick from the Pennsylvania Bat Conservation and Rehab and Dale Luthringer of Cook Forest. It's my honor.
I want to thank my guest Brent Erb for joining the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Meta for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch at hemlockstohellbenders.com, or you can click support this show in the podcast description to provide a monthly donation. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Matt Davis.